My name is Rachel. Thank you so much for being here. We've got lots of people in the chat today, and I just want to thank you so much for being here. It is Sunday, June 14th, 2020. Thank you so much for your kind words after last week's show and some of the words that I said at the beginning. I really appreciate people reaching out and being concerned and wanting to engage in anti-racism and the discussion further. So to that end, before I forget, we are going to be starting, it was actually sort of over the course of the last week, the community came forward and wanted to start the work together. So if you want to learn more, please go onto the Slack channel if you're a patron and look under the hashtag books channel, and there's information there for people who would like to get involved. So thank you so much for being here, you guys. We've got an absolutely full chat. So the way that this podcast works is it's really evolved and changed over the years. And it started off with me sitting in what I call it our Ogopogo chair, but it's like one of those like poyoing chairs. I don't even know how to say the word, from IKEA, with Nora strapped on my chest and me talking to my camera, my onboard camera on our old laptop was so poor quality. And now we're here. So that was in 2014. Yeah, in the spring of 2014, because Nora was only a couple months old. And here we are 6 years later. It's just amazing. So thank you to everybody. I really appreciate you being here. And for the patrons of the community, now the show has sort of morphed from that to being a live stream every week. And it's usually on the weekends now because of all of the social distancing and changes in the workplace. We've kind of gone to a weekend podcast, and it really means that a lot of you can be here, which is wonderful. And I think that we will keep that going for the foreseeable future, even after the kids are back in school and whatnot. I think we'll still stick with a weekend stream for the live stream because a lot of people are off on the weekend. I'm unusual that I work shift work and I'm not usually off, but it just seems to really work. Thank you so much for the birthday wishes. It is my birthday today. It's my pleasure to be here and to be able to do a show. So thank you. As many of you know, this podcast is devoted to hand spinning and making with our handspun yarns and working with our handspun and wheel spinning and e-spinning and spindle spinning. For those who are part of the School of Sweet Georgia, please use the affiliate link down below to join, because on Thursday we are going to be having a support spindling workshop that will be hosted by Debbie Held. It will be a Zoom workshop. I'm really excited about it. My mom is going to take the kids for a couple hours so that I can participate. So I'm really excited about that. Yeah, thank you, you guys. Everybody's just chatting away. It's so good to see everybody. I'm not even going to try to say who's here because honestly, there are so many people. We've got Becca and Sabella and Diane, Dana, Kelly, Wendy, Dorothy, Karma, Jean, our other Kelly. We've got two Kellys in our community who are very active. San, I know there's more Kellys out there, but the two that I'm thinking of are very active in the Slack channel. Alicia, Janelle, it's so good to see you guys. Bridget, Katja, Eve said hello first. Joanna. Yeah, Eve was in the chat while I was getting ready. So thank you so much, you guys, for being here. I made myself another matcha tea latte to enjoy during the show. I'm weaning myself off of coffee. It's a very long story. It all has to do with my mouth. And the I've got burning mouth syndrome, and it is slowly getting better. It's an irritation of one of the cranial nerves. It's a huge story. Anyways, I don't need to go into it on the show. It's not pertinent. It's not important. But caffeine is for some people really irritates, and the warmth of coffee really irritates their mouth. And I've actually been finding it's not too bad, and it doesn't really bother me that much. But I sort of thought whatever I can do to minimize the effects of the syndrome, I'll do it. So I've been having sort of like 1 cup of coffee a day, maybe 2, and I've been actually trying to have decaf. So it's actually been okay. one day at a time. So today's show, we have a few things to chat about. We've got, I talked about the changes to our book, or we're continuing on with our other book club, and then we're going to be adding a second sort of group to meet about the anti-racism work. We've got our yarn substitution content that's ongoing. Part 3 will be published in July. Part 2 has been published, is either in the process of being published or has been published. I can't remember off the top of my head what's scheduled for June. And yarn substitution will go sort of through to the end of the summer. So our queries and explorations tier on Patreon, very busy, very excited. We're going to be looking at some more yarn consistency this month together as a group. Yeah, it's been really wonderful for me to engage with them and to sort of create. We've almost got like a second spin group now, which is really fun. We've got breed and color studies coming up. It's going to be starting in July. Katrina and I are going to be recording an episode of Wool and Spinning Radio that will go live for all patrons on July 1st, and ordering will open up probably on the 15th of July, so make a note of that, and we will have all the dates and times and everything when stuff will be made available for our next breed and color study starting in July. Later in the month. I think it'll be July 15th from what Katrina said. Her and her sister are carting up a storm. For those who are new to breed and color studies, basically what we do for breed and color studies is it's a 6-month study, and we have had a lapse in our breed and color because of Katrina's dye schedule. She wanted to shift things a little bit. And for the first half of the year, we do combed top, and we look at a breed on combed top, and then for the second half of the year we look at another breed but on carded prep. So many of us don't have the luxury of processing a lot of raw fleece. We maybe live in small spaces, we maybe have allergies or pets or young children, or we just physically don't want to do it, or there's so many reasons why many people can't process fiber from the raw form. And so in breed and color studies, we it sort of look at a breed and look at sort of a specific preparation in relation to that breed. So it's not meant to be a catch-all. It's not meant to, be an exhaustive study of that breed. It's sort of meant to give people an opportunity to play, sometimes for the first time, sometimes for the umpteenth time, with a breed and some colors that push their comfort zone and open up a new avenue of some things that they might want to explore. So the Jane Austen book club meets this coming Friday. And then they're still deciding on a day for the anti-racism discussions. I think we have picked a book. Is that correct, Becca? To start that discussion. And I think that group has decided that meeting monthly would be manageable. So, yeah. Good. Oh, hi, Kim. You finally got in. That's wonderful. And what else do we have going on? For June, I'd like you to hop into the episode thread and let us know what you're working on, what things you're thinking about currently. Hop into the June episode thread and tell us a little bit about what's going on in your world, in your corner of the universe. And I haven't decided what we're going to do for the giveaway for June yet, but there will be some sort of fibery goodness being mailed out. I actually, on what day was it? Maybe Tuesday? We had a really lovely day, but it was windy, but it was nice to be outside. And I got the rest of the Freisian carded up, all of it. I stood out there and I did it until it was done. So I have a garbage bag full of all of these carded bats. I put them through 3 times and they came out absolutely beautifully. And this is a project that I've been working on for quite a long time. I'll just hold this up so you can see the fluffy goodness. And it was kind of neat because my neighbors, my 3 girlfriends who live in the cul-de-sac, they were like, they're like, we've seen you do this before. We've seen you spinning from this. Like, what is it that you're doing? So that was kind of fun because I showed them, I explained what a bat was, and they just watched me doing what I was doing. So one of these is going to be mailed out for the giveaway from last month. So that was Allison that won the bat from last month. So Allison, I'll be sending you one of these. And then the rest of them are going to be spun up this is one of my skeins that I've already done, and here's my other one. This is roughly 400 yards between, I think it's 450 between the two skeins. And I'm going to be making the Shore Cardigan by Carrie Bostic Hogue. And I'm really loving how this yarn's coming out. It's a 2-ply, short backward, no smoothing, spinning it, relatively gently, and then giving it a nice solid ply, but not over twisted. And of course I had shown my knitted swatch to you guys before, and I'm excited to get going with this spin because this is the knitted swatch here. I'm excited to get going with this again because I feel like I've been talking about it for a long time and I kept getting stalled because I didn't have a chance to get the to actually get the bats like carded up and get them done. So that's been really wonderful that I finally got a chance to work on that and get that done. So I will keep spinning, and I think what I'll do is actually once I have the yardage that I need for the cardigan, I'll start knitting and I'll stop spinning because I don't want to have a ton of this yarn left over. Like I don't want to have, a couple hundred yards, because what I'd prefer to do is pay it forward with the bats and be able to send them out to you guys. So if I have 2 or 3 left over at the end, we could use them for Tour de Fleece prizes, or we could use them for monthly giveaways. It's nice to be able to share these kind of fibers around because they're not super easy to come by. So, and I'll have a sweater at the end and you'll have a bat to play with. So I'm going to continue to work on that. Now, our Made with Love along has been going on in the Ravelry group. This was something started by Rebecca and Becca. And I don't think that Rebecca's here today because it's right during their church. I got a text from her this morning. Oh, James did help. James has been helping me with all the carding and carding up all the bats and whatnot. So because I was outside and the kids were all playing, he helped me for actually quite a while, which is really nice. So he did. Oh, the book that we're doing to start our anti-racist work in the community is the How to Be an Anti-Racist by Ibram Kendi. It's a book that I haven't read yet, and I know there were quite a few people in the community who said it was on their list and that they had the book, but that they hadn't started reading yet. So are you spinning that for Tour de Fleece? Diane asks. Yes, I think so. I think I'm going to focus on spinning that. Tour de Fleece, actually, before we get into the Made with Love along, I haven't really talked about Tour de Fleece on the podcast yet. So maybe what I'll do is I'll just pivot a little bit and talk about that really quickly, and I'll load the link for the post that I wrote on Patreon last week. It's a public post, so everybody can see it, and everybody is invited to join. We have a Ravelry group going, a Ravelry thread. I did register us as a wildcard team, and so you can just participate, like just hop into the Ravelry thread in the Ravelry group. Woolen Spinning is our Ravelry group. I will post a link to the Tour de Fleece thread in the chat as well. So if you're watching this later and you click on your phone, so let me show you. If you're watching this later, when you're watching this later, if you look in the bottom underneath there, there's a whole bunch of buttons. If you click there, one will show live chat replay, and you just click that and you can see the live chat as it was playing as we were streaming. So when you're watching later, that's how you do that. So I'll actually show you with last week's show, because I had quite a few questions this past week about this, which I hadn't had for a while, and it does seem to go in fits and spurts a little bit, which is totally fine. So this is last week's show. So if you look underneath there, you see where it says live chat. If you click on that, the live chat replay will come up and all of that will be there. So when I post links in the live chat, you can actually see all of that come up, and the chat links will be there. Oh, putting my phone up to the camera messed up the the light. Oh, that's so cool, Kim. So her son used to make art bats for her shop when he was 5 and made art bats for a craft show that she did last year, even though now he's 15. That's so cool. Let me see if I can get the light to fix itself on here. If not, that's fine. So before we get into talking about projects and run the credits and stuff, I wanted to quickly mention the Made with Love Along. So the Made with Love Along is running from now until the end of July, and there is a finished thread in Ravelry. Tour de Fleece starts, I know I'm skipping around a little bit, but Tour de Fleece starts on the 27th. Everybody is invited. And then the Made with Love Along is actually finishing at the end of July. So some people may actually want to include a project that they are doing for the Made with Love Along in Tour de Fleece to get the spinning done and whatnot. So that is something to think about if you've been kind of putting it off. So the Made with Love Along is a time that we can do what we do best and get creative. It is a time to make and lift up others. Rebecca's blog post is linked in the show notes at patreon.com/Welford Pearls. And the posts go live and are public for everybody, and all the links are there as of Tuesday at 4 p.m. every week, so Pacific Daylight Time. So the show is available for patrons only for a few days, and then it's made public later in the week on Tuesdays at 4 p.m. To learn more about the Make Along and the event, just hop into the Ravelry group, and we're asking that people work with Crafty Jack stuff, or that they're honoring and lifting up somebody who's local to them, or an indie dyer or a local maker to them. And then the prizes and the actual thread is for people who use either Katrina's yarn or fiber or Kelly G Knits patterns. And Kelly's actually in the chat today, which is really fun. So Terry spun this beautiful skein of yarn. It's absolutely gorgeous. I've completed spinning my bat from Crafty Jacks and have begun knitting the Ardent shawl. I spun the yarn as a gradient and the fiber was lovely to spin. She didn't say what kind of fiber it was, but it's a really beautiful spin. Really well done, Terry. Beautiful. All right, we have one more thing to share from the community. So I think before we do that, let's run the intro videos. I'm going to take a sip of tea and then we'll continue on. Okay, so this is one of our Zero to Hero make-alongs. Zero to Hero, hashtag Zero to Hero is a woolen spinning thing. It started back in 2016, 2017 from one of our community members at that time who had this idea of working as a community from fiber to spinning to knitting or weaving and actually finishing a finished project, a finished product. And so Maggie, I've been watching Maggie make this sweater for quite a long time. So it's my pleasure to sort of lift her up today and say, like, well done, because she did just an absolutely beautiful job. So this is her Shifty sweater. She shared this in the Zero to Hero thread, I think. I've linked it in the post, and the post where you can find this and find out more about her project. I have been bad about checking in here, but I finished my Zero to Hero project. Don't worry, Maggie. We all go through fits and spurts. This is my first hand spun sweater, but not my last. I put notes in my project page. So if you want to know some of the nitty gritty details about her sweater, please check out her post on Ravelry about this project. I'm really happy with how it turned out, and I'm looking forward to wearing it lots in the fall and winter. She did an amazing job. Well done, Maggie. So yeah. Mind-boggling. Yeah, incredible, wonderful. Love it. So colorful. That is stunning, beautiful. Yeah, she did an incredible job. And it was fun to watch her progress, because she would post in the Slack channel her progress, and she posted on Instagram a few times, and just to see it all come together for her, I just think is really, really, really amazing. So very, very well done, Maggie. Really, really beautiful. Projects. I have a lot going right now. I don't really know why. I'm not really sure what happened. Like, I'm not really sure why I have so much in progress. Like, it's kind of become a bit silly. I did, however, get a whole bunch of yarn plied up this past week. So I thought maybe we would start there, and we'll talk about my Vellichor. I've some progress on that I've been working on. It's been quite slow because I haven't had a lot of knitting time lately, but because I've been able to do quite a bit of spinning, I've been able to actually get like quite a lot made, which has been really fun. So maybe what we'll do first is we'll talk about this big Falkland spin. So this was a spin that was on my Ashford e-spinner, and I had been spinning it, and the idea was to take 3 braids of comb top that had been in my stash for quite a long time, and actually it was embarrassing how long they had been in my stash for. So here are 2 of the 3 braids, and I don't think I actually have a photograph of the 3rd braid handy. I'll just resize the photo quickly because it's absolutely enormous for some reason. So you can see here, the one that is on the far left, that sort of pinky purple one, that was a braid of, the label said Falkland. I don't think that it was Falkland. I think it might have been merino, maybe Polwarth. It wasn't, I don't think that it was Falkland. It didn't feel like Falkland. It didn't act like Falkland, but it was a bit fulled, and the dyer, I had lost the label for who the dyer was. So unfortunately, that was too bad because it was a little bit fulled. It was a little bit compacted. I think during the dyeing, it had probably been a little bit mistreated. But the other braid that's there is the Three Waters Farm, and I think it was called Morning Mist, but I might be wrong about that. Anyways, it was 100% Falkland. It was beautiful to spin, and I really, really enjoyed having it interspersed in and amongst the spinning. And then I added in a 3rd braid that had some blues and purples and browns that was very, very analogous to these other colors and what I had to work with. And I don't think that I have a photo of it, unfortunately, like right here and ready to go. If I don't have it right here and ready to go, I don't actually know where. I know I took a photo of the braid, but I don't know where it is. So I'll have to have a look and see if I can find that. Anyways, so I stripped the fiber down, and I I basically created all of these little nests of fiber and put them into a big bag, and I jumbled them all up, and I did them in 2 separate batches. So I had, out of the 4 ounces, I basically had, out of the 6 ounces, I had 3 ounces in one batch, and then I had 3 ounces in the other batch. Really, really fast spinning, but it took forever. I don't know what I was doing. Like, it just would not end. It just went on and on and on. And the funny thing is that, 3 ounces of fiber for me is really not that much. But for some reason, it just took forever. And it's funny because spinning on the e-spinner, I got the battery pack, and I've been pretty much using the battery pack like exclusively. But I think toting it around with me and spinning on it, I actually find that because I can work at stuff for quite a long time, and I can sit there and spin for quite a long time and work at stuff for, on the e-spinner for a long time, I think I have this idea in my mind that it's going to spin up like that, like it's going to be super fast. And so then when it's not, I'm sort of like, why isn't this getting done quicker? But yeah, it just seemed to really take a long time. So then at Spin Group on Friday, I sat and worked on it because I had only about half a dozen nests left, and all of a sudden it was done. And I was sort of like, oh, all the singles are done. So let me move stuff around on the webcam, and I'll share with you the finished yarn. I'm pretty happy with it. It's not my favorite spin, and the reason why is I think for the second bobbin my spinning changed a little bit, and I think my spinning actually got a little bit thicker. And so when I went to ply the first bobbin, the first skein of yarn, I had said to you guys last week, because I had it sitting here on the counter, I said, oh, we'll talk about this next week. What I ended up doing was I took that skein and I put it back through the wheel, and I really tightened up the twist. It was quite under twisted for what I wanted for this project. And so these two skeins that are here next to it, this is the original one that I tightened up. And then this is one of the ones that I got plied up yesterday. And here is the other one. They're still wet. So they haven't fully, like they're damp dry. So they haven't actually fully dried. So they haven't kind of come up to their full like poof factor yet. And the third braid of fiber that I added in was Falkland as well. So this one's quite wet. It doesn't, you see how it's kind of like it's a bit floppy. It's quite wet. And then this one is almost fully dry, the original one that I tightened up. So now that I tightened up the twist on it and basically like cinched it down, it's way closer in knitting weight, wraps per inch, to these two, because my singles halfway through the spin kind of changed. So my singles for the first half of the second bobbin were just a little bit thicker, and you can see that in the yarn, like it's just a little bit thicker. So I think part of it was just the excitement of starting the second bobbin. I wanted to get it done really quickly. I kind of went on to autopilot, wasn't really paying attention to what I was spinning, and but it worked out in the end, because what I'll do is I'll basically knit whatever I decide to knit. I originally was sort of thinking a sweater, but there's a lot of marling and barber poling in this yarn, and I think some sort of an oversized shawl would actually be a little bit better. I think I would wear it more if I found a shawl that sort of had that tonal yarn in it that would work with the pattern. Something like one of Isabel Kramer's oversized shawls, or there's so many designers out there that have those really wonderful oversized shawls that just lend themselves to a little bit of color, a little bit of tonality in the yarn, a little bit of barber poling, but it doesn't take away from the stitch pattern. It's a little bit of garter stitch. I don't know what my yardage is. I suspect it's somewhere around 800 yards, but I could be wrong. Might be a little bit more. So does anybody have any questions about this? It definitely is this spin that never ended. I'm going to alternate skeins. That's I think what I'll do, because it'll even it out, because these two are very even, and this one's it's like good enough, if that makes sense. So I'll alternate them. Start with like these two, for example, and then work in this one. I don't want to alternate 3 skeins at a time. That gets quite tangled and quite messy, but I can definitely alternate 2 at a time for sure. Oh, Becca, have a good evening. Yeah, so I think the spin overall turned out really well. I really love, one of the things that I really enjoy about spinning on the e-spinner is the portability. Like, spindles are very portable as well, but I find I have to be standing. And with the e-spinner, I can take a little table and I can set it up outside, especially out in the cul-de-sac when we're all visiting and chatting. And I can turn on the battery and I can just sit there and spin, sit cross-legged in a chair and just be really comfortable, have my tea or coffee, whatever. And it's just a really relaxed way to spin. The thing about it, though, that I do find a bit challenging is if you're spinning changes, like it did with the singles for this one, and they're a little bit thicker, I find I have to, if I'm not present and I don't catch myself, then I kind of keep spinning that way for a while and then sort of realize later. I will say, though, for all my spinning changed and for all that my singles got a little bit thicker there for a while, and I did, back off and thin them out a little bit again. And when I talk about they got a bit thicker for a while, like they went from 22 wraps per inch to down to 18 wraps per inch. So then the finished yarn is 14 wraps per inch instead of 12 wraps per inch. Like, that's the difference. So it's not insurmountable. But the when I finished off the singles, when I finished plying them all, I only had about 3-4 yards left on one of my weaving bobbins. So I was still actually quite even between the two bobbins because I had rewound the singles back. I don't know if I have a photo of that where I rewound the singles onto weaving bobbins. I had shown it on the podcast. I had shown it on the podcast last week or the week before. I had stored all of the singles on weaving bobbins as I spun. So then when I went to ply, and I kept them separate. So all the weaving bobbins from bobbin 1 and all the weaving bobbins from bobbin 2, when I rewound them, I kept separate, and then I plied them together just randomly. And I ended up with only a few yards. I think it was about 4 or 5 yards left from bobbin 1 that needed to be plied back on itself just from a center pull ball. So it's pretty good. It's pretty even. So yeah. Oh, Kim, congratulations. She's getting her Ashford e-spinner tomorrow. That's wonderful. I hope it arrives. That's awesome. I find it's a lot harder to keep the nano at the same speed. I keep knocking the speed dial when I switch it off to adjust the yarn guides. I have to pay attention. So Wendy, very interesting comment or timely comment, I should say, because there is a YouTube video, he did a, let me see if I can find it really quickly. I don't want to waste too much time from the podcast, but I do like gently interrupting the podcast sometimes to address some of this stuff, because I think sometimes it's really fun in the moment to talk about some of this stuff. So if I can just go to my history. There was a really helpful video that was published a while ago about the nano, and he was doing a sort of overarching review of it. And of course now I can't find it. Darn. It was such a helpful video. It was quite long, but he talked about an attachment that he found really helpful. It was a little switch that he plugs into his battery. Here it is. Yay! And it's about maybe the first third of the way through the video, if you don't want to watch the whole thing. So he hooks the switch into the battery as part of the power. And then he uses the switch to turn the nano off and on. And then he doesn't have to go back and forth between like switching it off, the nano on the side there. So it's like a little, I think it cost him like $6 to get off of like Amazon or something to get. And I mean, you could get them at any sort of local tech store, Radio Shacky type places. It goes into the battery pack, between the battery pack and the e-spinner, and you just flick the switch back and forth. And he has found that the battery pack that works for like charging a cell phone, if it has 2 outputs and it's charging your cell phone at the same time as it's running the nano, it will pull enough juice to be able to run the nano, because basically the nano doesn't necessarily pull enough juice from a battery. So the battery doesn't register that there's anything that's pulling energy, and so it shuts off. So he talks about, like, if you get one with 2 outputs, you put this little switch in between, you can switch it on and off without having to reach back and actually touch the nano itself, which is a really cool hack. I'd actually be really curious to see if it would work on the e-spinner as well, because then you wouldn't have to, when you're traveling, like I always think, like, how could I make this work if we're in the trailer? Because when we're away, especially for really long periods of time, everything that I take, I have to think about, do I really need this? And often I have to leave it at home. And I actually thought about maybe those little switches, if you could put one in between the e-spinner and the battery, just like he does with the nano, you could switch it on and off, and you could leave the big foot pedal at home, or not foot pedal, but the pedal that you use to turn, that a lot of people like to use, because otherwise, the same with the e-spinner, it's the same with the handspin. Otherwise, you're actually having to manually turn it on and off on the machine itself, which is fine. If we were traveling, I would totally do that and leave the paddle at home. But if you had that little switch between the I'll show you really quickly because I feel like explaining it is not really getting the point across, and I don't know if it would work on the e-spinner. So on the e-spinner, that yarn is so wet. Oh, sorry. Now I'm dropping things. So the e-spinner has the two outputs at the back. So the one is for the pedal, and then the other one is for the battery or the power, right? And so when I'm spinning, what I do, I don't have a bobbin on here right now, but that's okay. What I do is I turn on the battery, so you can see the battery is on, and then I sit the paddle on top, and it starts to spin and do its thing, right? And then when you want to turn it off, it slows down and stops. When you want to turn it back on, you push it again, slows down, and then of course, and so on, right? So in the video, what he shows is putting a switch between here and the battery, so that he puts, there's a connection, there's a thing that goes between this and this, and he can use that little switch to turn it off and on, and it eliminates the need for this, which is kind of cool. So I was thinking about looking into that for both my Nano and maybe trying it out on the e-spinner and seeing if it would work. So very cool. Very cool. People are so inventive. They're just amazing. Yeah, you can get them for the wall plug too. I guess I'm kind of thinking about about it in relation to batteries, only because I am thinking about it for like travel. And how can I make this thing lighter and easier to take with me? Same with the Nano, because the Nano, if I can get it working with the battery and have it plugged into my cell phone at the same time to charge, and have it pulling just enough juice that I can spin on the Nano, I can take it camping with us in a couple weeks, which would be really cool. So these are the things that I stay up at night and think about. And I know that you do too. Okay, so the next spin that I wanted to chat about was my camel silk. So this is my camel silk spin that I had on my very fast flyer on the Lendrum. So we had demoed this last week, and I left the very fast flyer over there. So do you guys want me to go get it? Because it's right on the bed. This is a colorway from, well, she doesn't really do colorways per se, but it's a braid from Westcoast Colour. You guys know Lynn Anderson. She's up in Tappan, British Columbia. She calls this blend her orgasm, and this is 50% camel, 50% silk. So this yarn and this fiber spins like silk. The camel, when you're spinning it, you can feel it a little bit, but it really has this overarching feeling that it's silk. And when you're holding your hands for this spin, I was holding my hands quite far apart because I was just spinning off the top of across the top. Oh, good to see you, Katya. Thank you for being here. Have a lovely day. When I was holding the fiber and I was spinning just across the top, and this is part of the filming, I filmed some of it, and it's part of the content for July's 51 yarns for the group A, spinning silk and luxury fiber. So there is some video coming in July that you guys will see with me actually spinning this fiber. And I was holding the fiber and just spinning short forward and just going across the top. And my hand was actually moving quite far. And it really, I demoed it last show as well on episode 154. And I really was quite surprised at how like silk it felt. Same as the skein of camel silk that I spun back in the fall. No, back in February. It very much felt the same way. And I sort of thought, well, maybe my second time spinning it, it'll feel a little bit different, or maybe because I'm used to spinning this, I've spun it quite a bit now. Maybe it'll feel a little bit different, but no, it feels like camel silk. It feels like silk. And it drapes like silk. It's hard to show you on the webcam because I can't hold things up. So let me go to the main view for just a second and you guys can see the drape. So this is a 3-ply. I wanted it to match the other skein that I had spun back in February when I first got my e-spinner. I pulled it out of my stash and I spun it right away because I think what I'm going to do is actually use these two yarns together. So I think the other yarn is going to become warp and this will be the weft. And so I wanted them to be the same. So this is, you can see there's no elasticity. It's just straight. There's no, you know, scales like we get in wool that are elastic and, you know, poof up and sort of, you know, increase in diameter and shorten when they're washed and finished. With camel and silk, they don't have that property. It's very warm. When I was spinning it, it was really interesting because as I was spinning it, I think when people start spinning some of these luxury fibers, their hand gets really super sweaty. So the hand that's holding the luxury fiber gets really sweaty. And it's because they're so warm. Like camel down is really warm and silk is really warm in the sense that you've got all this fiber in your hand and yeah, you're just holding it. So I try to keep my grip really, really light. I always think light and airy, light and airy, light and airy. I just sit there, you know, kind of chanting to myself. And this is sort of what it ended up looking like in the end. It's hard for the camera to capture it because of the sheen. So it might actually be better if I show you a photo that I took of it and then you guys can really appreciate this yarn. I'm really happy with how it turned out. It isn't spun as finely as I had hoped. But on the other hand, it was the first time playing with the very fast flyer, and so I'm sort of not surprised that it wasn't more fine because I was sort of playing with it. I changed around my ratios a couple of times. So you can see there the colors are really barber poling and they really combining. And because I spun it just end to end, there was those long chunks of color where Lynn had just poured the dye randomly onto the fiber. And what ended up happening is you get these really long singles of just blue and then long singles of just yellow and long singles of just the burgundy reddish color. And then, of course, what ends up happening is you get these long, you know, sort of stripes, quote unquote, in the finished yarn. So, yeah. Yeah, I'm thinking warp and weft. That's what I'm thinking. I don't think the other skein is here. I had it nearby and I hadn't... Yeah, it's not here. I think I put it over on the other side. I was looking at the two skeins, like I was holding them. For those who don't know the other skein that I'm talking about, this is actually it here. And this was the original, actually I'll show you the original fiber first. So this was the original fiber and how Lynn dyed it originally. And so you can see how she just poured the dye on there. And, you know, it works really well because you don't end up with a lot of striping in the sense that when you go to start spinning, you end up with these long singles. If you don't strip it down, you end up with these long singles of that are one color. That are one color, and you end up, like you can see on the bobbin there, the long singles, and then you end up with, you know, you're going to still end up with a little bit of striping, but because there's such long repeats of color and you've got that yellow running through, you know, yard after yard after yard of that single, and then you've got the burgundy running through yard after yard after yard, and then the same with that gorgeous denim-y bluey teal. You don't end up with all of that striping. So because it was only 57 grams, I didn't need to strip it down. I just spun it from the top short forward, holding it really lightly. And that's actually more fiber than I like to have in my hand, because I find when you have a lot of fiber in your hand, it can get really askew. It gets really flyaway. It kind of creates a big mess. It gets a little bit hard to manage. There are some sections of the yarn that are a little bit more thickly spun where it kind of went through and it was a little bit less consistent than I wanted it. But part of that was because I was getting used to the fast flyer. I was spinning from the top. across the top, sorry, and I hadn't stripped the fiber down. But I find with these yak silk blend or camel silk blends, yak silk blends, where you've got a short fiber and then a fiber that's probably been cut down, and even though this was beautifully blended, the more you strip them down, they just start to kind of just fly apart because there's nothing in the fibers to kind of hold them together and make them be friends. Like with wool, when you start to strip it down, or sorry, when you hold it all together, wool sort of tends to kind of more like stay together, you know, like it, when you start to kind of play with it and strip it, it wants to be friends with itself and it wants to stay together and it stays really nice and clean. But with some of these other fibers, when you start to strip them, they do start to kind of fall apart. And you really notice that with like Rami, and I'm trying to think of some of the other ones that kind of tend to start falling apart. Some of the bast fibers, certainly the silks. So you want to strip them down, but you want to be really gentle if you're going to. And with this yarn, you know, I wanted it to be a very gentle color transition and kind of keep the colors as together as possible. So I will show you the other spin that I did that was the same. So this is the same blend that I did back in the fall, back in February. So this is the other one. So this is the same dyers, Lynn of Westcoast Colour. The colors are the same, but no red this time. And again, I didn't strip it down. I just spun it end to end. I think I did strip this one down actually, because I had put it aside for years. I had started spinning it. It was really slippery. I had a lot of trouble managing it. So I had put the singles on a storage bobbin, on one of my weaving bobbins, and I just left it and I didn't touch it. And my original plan was to make a cabled yarn, just for fun more than anything. And then in the end, I decided to do a traditional 3-ply, which is there on the e-spinner. So, and then it ended up being this. So this yarn is a little bit more blues and yellows. And then this yarn is the same colors, a little bit darker because there's more blue in it. Try to hold it up here. And then it adds in that burgundy red. So the two yarns will work together beautifully. And together they're about 120 grams, which is a good amount of yardage and a good amount of yarn. So it'll work really, really well for warp and weft. So that's that project. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'm really happy with this. Thank you for the kind comments. Yeah. Yeah, some of these spins, it's funny recently, like, you know, this one, the other one that was, I'm calling it its sister spin. The other camel silk that I did that was back in February. This spin, the Falkland, they've all been like palette cleansers for me. They've all just been really gentle, very kind, nothing super high pressured, and I've really enjoyed them. So I'm glad that I've taken the time to have some spins like that. Sort of taken advantage of the 51 yarns content a little bit, and spun some stuff that I really wanted to spin, and I've been really, really enjoying it. So this is an Andrea Mowry pattern. We're going to flip into knitting for a few minutes. This is the Vellichor, and I haven't made much progress on it, so I won't say too much about it because I have talked about this in the past. This is Crafty Jack's commercial Tough and Tender. It's her Targhee nylon sock yarn. It's beautiful. I love working with it, and that's the Ocean colorway. And then this is one of her colorways as well. This is Pasuta, and it was a braid of Targhee bamboo silk. Targhee bamboo silk? Yeah. And I spun it as a 3-ply fractal. So I was looking for a pattern that would show off the fractal, and I stumbled on the Vellichor. I hope I'm saying that correctly. I have no idea. And what I really wanted to say about this today was that I wanted a pattern that would show off the striping of the fractal and would show the movement, and that's exactly what it's doing. So you can see that it's showing off that movement. So it goes from the brown, then there's some marling in there. In here, there's some marling. It's kind of hard to see when, the nice thing is you can't really see it unless you're right up close. And then it goes into the blue, And now you can see there's the lighter blue coming out now and a little bit of marling with the brown, because the brown is running through all of this, because the brown was I'm at the point right now in the fractal is 3-ply. I'm at the point in the fractal where it was all brown singles for the one bobbin, and then it's moved through the colorway on the other 2 bobbins, and now I'm kind of transitioning to the blue. So now you can see the singles now, or sorry, the yarn, it's all blues. It's a little bit of the ocean mixed in there. It wants a bit of the spotlight as well. So now I'm into the part where it's going to be all blue with the color twisting, the marling, the barber poling with the other 2 colors, and it'll move through that, and then it'll go back to the brown as the base. Because when you're spinning a fractal, one of your bobbins is just spun end to end from the colorway. So you don't strip it down, and you just spin it end to end. And then the other 2 bobbins are stripped. So you take a third of the fiber and spin it end to end. A third of the fiber you strip, and then the last third you strip and strip and strip and strip. And you end up with this really interesting background striping. And I almost think of it as like the bobbin that's stripped and stripped and stripped, where it moves through the colorway really quickly. It almost creates like this confetti effect. And it's almost like it's kind of poured on top of the base yarn and the base striping, which is the bobbin that was spun just end to end and preserved the underlying colorway. Does that make sense? So I really wanted fractals. I really wanted to pick a pattern where the fractal would be really showcased. So in the pattern, she actually has you choose a third color that creates like a grid across, and it's a very small amount of yardage that you need. And so one of these garter stitch rows would be a contrast color, and I was going to put in white, or the other color I thought of was cream, but there was another one that I thought of, and I can't remember what it was, that I thought would work, because I had it all laid out on the bed and I was looking at it, and I put it on the table, put it in the sunlight, but I ended up abandoning that because I didn't want to interrupt the fractal and interrupt the striping. So yeah, making the smallest size. I'm hoping that it's not too big. It's a 38-inch around, so it's supposed to kind of fit with quite a bit of positive ease. And there's some information in the pattern about what you want to be looking for. So I'm hoping that with some ease and having it just sort of fall, that it'll look really cute, like with a tunic underneath or a longer t-shirt, tucked in at the front in jeans. Yeah, so we'll see. If I get sort of this is, I can't remember how far, this is only like 4 or 5 inches in. If I get to 10 inches and I put it on my dress form and I'm not super happy with it, I'm not sure what I'll do. We'll see. Kelly says, there's a snag in my orifice and I don't know what to do. So you can use some, not sandpaper, but like if it's a catch, you can sand it down. Yeah. Because I'm sure if your singles catch on it, I'm sure it's like snagging them, right? So yeah. When you move the single to a weaving bobbin and get ready to ply, do you keep it in order or random? So it depends on the spin. With the Falkland, I actually just did it randomly. There was no rhyme or reason to the little nests that I was spinning, so I just plied at random and I just wound off at random. If I was rewinding something like a fractal, I would make sure that all of the singles from that one bobbin went onto the same weaving bobbin. So I would use some of my bigger weaving bobbins. And if I was doing something like a traditional 3-ply where I had tried to spin the colors in a really long sequence, I would probably try to rewind them all onto one weaving bobbin. Because this spin, the 6-ounce spin, was so big and it was spun at random, I just wound the bobbins off. I didn't worry about preserving the sequence of the spin. Does that make sense, Dana? I hope that's helpful. I'm getting hot in here. I knew I wouldn't last the whole show with my sweater on, but I was cold. We've had a really lovely morning. I went for a walk this morning, and it's the Rogue Invitational this weekend. So Mike's been watching that, and we've been kind of watching some of the stuff with CrossFit unfold, because I'm sure many are aware of, who are part of that community, are aware of the comments that were made by CrossFit headquarters and whatnot. So we've been kind of watching that unfold. And then the Invitational was this weekend. So we were watching some of that. I'm not going to go into any detail about this spin. It was the April 2020 Spunky Club. It's Chasing Rainbows. It's the Woolpool was the base fiber. It's been really a lot of fun to knit or to spin. So I've actually just been, again, palette cleanser, spinning away in the background, just really enjoying it. I took half of the braid and I just stripped it down about, I think I stripped it 6 times. And then I've just been taking the fiber and just, giving it a little, attenuating it a little bit, giving it a little bit of a twist to hold it together, and then just spinning. It's been wonderful. I've just been on total autopilot. I put it on my Lendrum, which is actually behind me, and I put it on the fast flyer. So I took the very fast flyer off for this project, and I've just been spinning autopilot, and I am kind of selfishly hoping that that's done next week, because it was just a palette cleanser. It was just something fun. So, and then I've been working on my Anacortes, my Anacortes Autumn Bosworth spindle spin. I've been taking this outside with me, and I'm almost finished another spindle spin that I wanted to finish up. So that's just been in the background working on it. I will get some video of me spinning on it. I just honestly haven't had a chance. The kids finished up at school, and I had a couple of shifts at work, and so I haven't really had a chance to do anything extra this week, to be honest. I'm sure you guys really understand. We're all kind of in this boat of everything is very intense right now. Everything takes about 3 times as long. I'm sure you've noticed. And as things sort of slowly do start to open up, and they need to open up, it just feels like things just takes a while to get things done, like going to get the groceries takes a bit longer, and, washing any produce when you get home takes a bit longer. And I've just been really trying to, lean into that. Things are taking a bit longer, and not super efficient, not super fast. The kids, even at school, they've been lingering and chatting with their friends, and Nora's been playing hopscotch, and the hopscotch pads are all really spread out, and so they've been playing together and chatting and just lingering. And my mom's come over for tea a couple of times. We had a virtual funeral yesterday for my sister-in-law's mom. It was amazing. If you are thinking about doing a virtual funeral, you've had a death in the family, or you have a family member or a friend who's waffling about doing one, do it. It was amazing. It was a really, really phenomenal experience. And but it took it took almost 3 hours. And a sort of a traditional funeral, you sort of expect it to be an hour and a half, and you can kind of funnel out, and maybe there's tea after and people linger, but it's not sort of an all-day affair. And in the end, it did actually take up a huge chunk of the day, and it was really healing, and it was really wonderful to see a life honored. And so everything just is very intense, and I think that intentionality it's exhausting, and being in that is very exhausting. And I've been very aware of not trying to distract myself. This is just so, where's my phone? Let me just scroll Instagram, just to kind of get away from what's going on. And instead just sort of being this is taking a while. It's really intense. And just sort of taking a really deep breath, to be honest. When we breathe throughout the days and throughout our moments, I don't think we're aware at how shallow we're breathing. This is something we talk about at work all the time. I don't think I've ever talked about this on the podcast, so if I have, I'm sorry. But for those of us who are sort of working at home with young children, or maybe we've got, maybe we're a sandwich and we've got aging parents, or there's so many things that cause stress and cause undue turmoil, right? And we always talk about at work, like as soon as things start to ramp up, if you become aware of it, you'll notice that your breathing gets more and more shallow. And as soon as you start breathing more shallowly, your brain gets the message that you're in fight or flight, and it starts to release cortisol and epinephrine, and you have, fight or flight. Like you're either going to fight it out or you're going to run, and you have a stress response. And so taking a moment to take a really deep breath, it sends the message to your brain that all is well. And it decreases your cortisol. It brings your stuff down. It just makes you feel calmer. And so instead of grabbing my phone to scroll Instagram or grabbing, something to eat, because how often do we self-medicate with substances, food, coffee, etc. I've just been taking a deep breath. And we teach it at work all the time, and we talk about it at work all the time, and then you forget. So, yes, that's a good way of putting it, Wendy. Everything needs so much planning right now. So true. So I have to tell you guys, before we get onto my wheel, I have to tell you, and if you want to just skip to the spinning, in the time bar down below, you can skip across the show now. So there is, at the end of the live stream, what I do every week now is I actually put on I take a few minutes and I go through the show and I put timestamps. So they'll come up along the bottom of the show. So if we have technical difficulties, for example, and there's no sound for a couple of minutes for whatever reason, you can skip forward and there will be a label that says sound on, and you can just go to that point. So I'm hoping that kind of helps people with navigating what they want to see in the podcast, because sometimes you just don't want to be a part of the small chat, like the chitter chatter. And I totally get that. So yesterday, I went for a walk with my best friend, and we were walking locally. It's about 15-minute drive from here, and it's down along the Fraser River. And we're walking along and we're chatting away. And the reason why we go there is because the paths are wider, and they're about 3 meters wide. So to walk side by side and still sort of be a little bit separate, but also just have a bit of space, we've always just gone there. And because when we're with the kids, we have to be aware, if we go somewhere with a really narrow path, it's hard to... This is before social distancing and COVID and blah, 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 blah. It's actually really hard to, like, when you're taking up a lot of the path and the space, and then there's other people around, and sometimes the kids aren't super aware, kids are very focused on what they're doing. So Amber and I started going there because it's just more open and more space. So we're walking along, deep in conversation about what we were talking about. And it was, something that's very near and dear to both of our hearts. And we were really kind of really talking about something. We were both very intent. And we're walking along, and she's like, she puts her hand out to stop me. So she put her hand right here, which is like unusual for her to kind of do that. She's like, did this to me. So she's sort of like this to me, because I was right next to her, relative. And she's like, there's a bear. And I stopped and I looked up and I was like, what? And she's like, there's a bear. So right in front of us, about 3 or 4 meters away, there's this big brown bear, just whoom, his big ears, he went whoom, and he's right up on his hind legs. So at first we thought, I wonder if it's a mama with her cubs, feeling very territorial, and there's these 2 people. And Amber and I are both from up north. We've spent a lot of time outside. We've spent a lot of time in nature. We've spent, both her and I were like, oh, okay. And he's like right there, and he's like, woo woo, and you can kind of hear him like, So Amber's like, okay. And Amber's really verbal. She talks out her anxiety. She talks out her stress. So she's like, okay, so we're just going to walk backwards. We're going to stay really calm. We're going to just walk backwards, and we're going to be very calm. We're not going to freak out and run. We're just going to walk. And she's totally doing it for her own, to keep herself calm, because I was already walking backwards. So we walked backwards about 4 or 5 meters, and then we turned around and walked. And we were really lucky because we were at a point in the path where we were here on the path, and there's a right-hand turn to go back to the parking lot. So we were actually really lucky because once we got to that T-junction, we just went around the corner. He couldn't see us anymore. And there happened to be a man there, probably in his 60s, and it was obviously very, very fit and had a huge dog with him. So who was very docile, which was actually really good, because immediately Amber and I were like, okay, all is okay. But he continued to stand there on his hind legs for a really, really long time, and it was looking, because they have that look, and he's a big, big black bear. Like, he's a brown bear, but he's big, big black bear. He's big, and he's right up on his hind legs. And we were like, okay, we need to be more aware of what's around us when we're walking and we're having these deep life conversations. So that's when your cortisol needs to go, and you need to have a big stress response, and you need to have a big adrenaline rush, right? Oh, it was crazy. So I am going to move cameras around. Yeah, you'd think it would be hard to miss the bear, right? Like, you'd think that her and I would have seen him immediately because he was right in front of us, but we were so intent on what we were doing. It was so funny. We could laugh about, even in the moment, we were both like, are you freaking kidding me? Like, this is crazy. Apparently, the guy was telling us, the guy that we turned when we went around the corner, he was right there, and we said, oh, there's a bear right there. And he's like, oh, is he a big black bear? And we said, yeah, he's really big. And he was like, yeah, he's been in the park the last couple of weeks. The conservation officers have moved him a couple of times, but he keeps coming back. And he said, I'll call them. He said, I was chatting with them last week. He's like, I'll call them when I get home, and I'll let them know that he's still around. So we were both like, oh, okay. Like, this is obviously an ongoing thing. We do have a lot of bears locally. Yeah, coyotes, it's so funny how, like, different people, like, have different comfort levels with different things, because coyotes actually cougars really scare me, because they'll track you. Okay, I'm going to move cameras around a little bit, and then we're going to get on the wheel. So you guys keep chatting about the bear. This is always really fun when I can do this. I always feel like it's really neat to be able to kind of move equipment around a little bit and be able to, share some of this stuff with you guys. So I'm going to make myself quite small in the corner here so that you can really see my hands. And I am going to adjust this camera a little bit so you can see me a little bit better. I think, is that where I'm sitting? Nope, not even close. There we go. That's better. So, awesome. Okay, so this is my yak silk. Just going to catch up with the chat a little bit because you guys had a couple of things to say. Yeah, I'd take cattle over bears any day as well, Eve. As definitely cattle over bears, or even like horses. Yeah, it was funny. I love that. So, oh, thank you, Marla. This sweater that's in the back here that you can't see, now that I've moved the cameras around, that is my Gentle Morning. So we talked about that last show. So if you're interested in learning more, you can go back and have a look. Yeah, isn't that true, Kelly? And you'll never see a cougar, but they sure see us. I know, they are scary, scary, scary. Yeah, so Wendy, the podcast room, it's actually our bedroom right now. We're going to sell our dining room furniture. And it's just time to move it along. We don't need it. It's too big, blah, blah, blah. And we're actually going to move temporarily. We're going to move all of this into the dining room. We already have two tables, like we've got the dining room table and the kitchen table, and we're just finding that we don't use the dining room table at all for anything. So we might move all of this down there because currently we're actually in our bedroom, because after Rebecca was here, we never went back to putting all of this in the office. It's a small space and we want it to be sort of more for the kids going forward. So we're going to put some desks in there eventually. It'll be somewhere they can do homework, they can have projects ongoing, whatever they want to have going on in there. And this will probably go down into the dining room. And there's a lot of light down there as well. That's one of the reasons why I like being up here, is there's a lot of light. So, and it gets me away from sort of some of the main parts of the house. So this is my yak silk that I wanted to share with you guys finally, sort of as the last part of the show. It's got this really super high sheen. It's a 50-50 blend. And this is sort of some of the stuff that I've been spinning for the 51 yarns stuff for July. So really a lot of fun to spin, but very, very different in the sense of very, very slippery. And where the camel silk spun like silk, this is spinning like yak. It feels very short stapled, and it's not quite as manageable, if that makes sense. So the yak, the little fibers kind of pop out. It's a little bit more flyaway. This is undyed. So you can see that I've folded the fiber over my pointer finger, and I'm spinning from the fold. I've got my lace kit on my Lendrum, on my Magicraft. So this is a Magicraft Suzy for those who aren't familiar with this wheel. It's a Suzy Pro. And I'm spinning at 28-1, which doesn't really mean anything in the sense that I'm not counting treadles or worrying about, exactly how much twist is going in, but I am trying to put in a fair amount of twist. And it's just, I tried spinning it several different ways, and nothing really felt right. Oh, that's so true, Wendy. Yeah, the dining room table is for stuff you can't be bothered to put away. It ended up being a surface for all of the kids' home learning. And so the more it kind of got stuff piled up on it from the home learning stuff, we sort of started talking about, like, do we really need this surface? Do we really want this surface? We don't use it anyways very often. So I've got this big thick chunk. You probably can't really see just because I can't zoom in the webcam any more than it's zoomed in. And it's just this big thick chunk of yak that's sitting here. So I'm just going to use my forefinger and my thumb, and I'm just going to smooth it right down, and it just goes right into the yarn. But chunks like that, with these fibers, like, it's all different staple lengths, and sometimes you just get a chunk of one fiber. And by spinning it over the fold, I just feel like I have a bit more control. And I could spin long draw, like I could sort of start to draft out. I have to put a little bit more twist in it when I do that, so I have to treadle a little bit faster. A little bit, it's a little bit faster of a way to spin. So I'm drawing out, allowing the twist to run up into the singles, and then I'm kind of attenuating it a little bit further, drawing it out a little bit more, and then reeling it on. It's actually a really nice way to spin. Oh, also, Diane, thank you for your compliment about the calendar. So we added a calendar plug-in to the Slack channel, so it will notify everyone when there's an upcoming stream. So like this morning, for those who have access to the Slack channel, it went in there. You'll see, if you go back to this morning, it shows live stream coming up in 15 minutes for everyone. And then I also posted some links. I pinned the post to the top of Patreon. So when you log in and you go to Patreon and you're looking at it through your profile, and you go to the Wool and Spinning landing page, the pinned post at the top there is a link to the index and a link to the calendar, and you can see the calendar, and the times are in Pacific Daylight. Yeah. The wheel that I'm spinning on is the Magicraft Suzy Pro. like spinning it long draw. It's actually feels quite natural. So when I get these chunks of yak that come through, I can kind of, so I'm drawing out, and then there's a chunk of yak right there, so I can just draft it back a little bit and draw it out a little bit. And then yeah, not bad. You can see how as I'm spinning, let me see if I can show you this and then we'll say goodbye. So I'm just watching the time. You can see how as I'm spinning, this is the, I've been holding it over the fold like this, right? You can see how it's sort of pulling a lot of the silk out, and what's left underneath is a lot of the short bits, the yak, which is kind of interesting. So with stuff like this, I don't necessarily want to just like sort of like pull it apart and realign it like you would for wool. I'm just going to sort of lay it on top and keep on going rather than playing with it a whole bunch, because it just starts to fly away and drift away. You could probably spin this from the cloud as well, where you just hold it in your hand. But I kind of like it spun long draw over the fold. As long as enough twist runs up into it, it's really creating a lovely yarn. Because with the silk, you want a lot of twist, and the yak is so short stapled that you need a lot of twist in there to hold it together, and it's so soft. The silky yak down is so soft that you're not going to make a really wiry, stiff yarn. So I'll show you a ply back test. Now normally I would take this off the bobbin, so I'm being a little bit lazy, but this is quite nice. The mouse is gonna fall. Yikes. So that's the ply back test. That's really nice, eh? Sorry for holding it a bit odd. I haven't knotted the end, so it's not going to stay together if I don't knot it. I always put a knot at the end of my ply back tests so that it holds the twist. So let's see. Yeah, isn't that beautiful? That heathering. The heathering is just beautiful, of the gray and the white silk that's in there against the natural colored yak. It's just gorgeous. Love this stuff. So I've got quite a bit to spin. So I'm going to keep working on that, and I will report back when it's done. I don't think it'll make a big skein. It'll kind of be like this. There won't be any bounce. There won't be any elasticity, but I'll put it aside and probably use it for something in weaving. My friend Kim McKenna has been doing some really, really cool experiments with weaving with silk. So she's been using different warps, linen, cotton linen, and then for the weft, she's been playing with her different silk yarns, and she's been getting some beautiful results. So it's kind of planted the seed for me that maybe using something like that, putting some of these yarns aside and not putting a bunch of pressure on myself to put them on the loom right away or to weave with them right away, but just kind of keeping them in the back of my mind that maybe it's something that I want to play with in the future. Yeah, it's very pretty. Yeah, thanks you guys. I have a yak mulberry silk blend my son wants a shawl from. Ooh, fun, Marla, fun. All right. So I think that's it for today. Just let me look at our show notes. I think we've covered everything. I have my pinwheel towels that are finished, and I did want to share them with you and show them to you, but they're downstairs. They are all hemmed and done, and I don't think that I have any photos of them that are finished. Oh, I do have photos. Look at me being all prepared. You guys are so patient with me. Of all these things that we talk about in our show, we always have lots of stuff to cover and to share and to show, and you guys are so gracious. All right, so I'm going to move myself over. Whoa! I lost you for a minute there. That was scary. So these are my pinwheel towels. So what I ended up doing was they're 18 ends per inch, and it's a 2-2 twill. Very simple, 2/8 cotton. They shrunk a lot in the wash, and they really cinched up into a lovely drapey fabric. I have already hemmed them. So what I did when I was weaving was I did 75 of the red rows to create the pinwheel. And so it was 4 picks of red, 4 picks of cream, 4 picks of red. And the cream is actually the natural cotton linen, cottolin, 60/40 cotton linen. And a couple of them I did a red hem, and then the rest I did a cream hem. So the 2 red ones are actually I'm keeping. And so as I wove, I did 75 rows of the red, and then I did 3 inches. Yeah, 3 inches for the hem for the one towel, and then 1.5 inches for the new towel. And then I kept on weaving the pinwheel. So I was very methodical about how I did that, so that I would end up with exactly 1.5 inches hem, and then I did a folded hem. And as you can see on my machine, I did a zigzag hem along the bottom. And actually what that did, at first I didn't really like it, but what I actually ended up liking about it in the end was when you see them from a distance, you can't actually see the hem stitching. Like, you can't see that it's machine stitched, and it holds the hem beautifully in place. And when I went to rewash them and iron them for gifts, because I'd already washed the fabric and then I hemmed them and then I washed them again, you can't actually tell what's the right side and the wrong side. And there isn't really a wrong side on these anyways. And so I just carried up the weft as I wove, and they just have they hang really nicely. They've got a really nice density to them. They're not super, super thick. And you can see the pinwheel pattern. And then I only had white twill tape. I was kind of bummed that I didn't have any red or cream. So next time I go to the fabric store, and like whenever I can go, I'll get some twill tape that is like different colors. And what I did was at the one end of the tea towel, I cut a 3-inch piece of twill tape, and I folded it and I tucked it into the hem, so that when I hem stitched, that little piece of twill was in place, and then I can hang them. So the ones that I've gifted to the kids' teachers, James's tutor got one, his 2 teachers, because it's a job share, they both got one, and then Nora's teacher got one. They all have a little piece of twill tape, because, you know, some people like to hang their tea towels and some people like to fold them. So I thought, well, at least they have the option. So they turned out really, really well. I'm really happy with them. I think what I would do if I was making these again is I would do 20 ends per inch for the warp and weft instead of 18, because the twill can take that little bit tighter weave structure. These turned out beautifully, and I am really happy with them. They'll wear really well for many years. But I think 18 ends per inch would have created just a slightly denser fabric. But I like the drape of the slightly more open. And then I did an 11.5 yard warp, and I ended up with 10 towels. And I've talked about this with the other warp that I did. I had done like a striping kind of rainbow pattern, and I'm just not going to be able to get it done. Like, it'll be on the loom for years if I don't kind of change my approach. So with these, I'm really glad that it was just 2 colors. I could just weave them off. Each towel took about half an hour to do. And and they ended up really exceeding my expectations. So, and they hemmed up really fast. I got them done while the kids were working on schoolwork because they didn't need my help at that point. They were just finishing off like last minute things on Thursday. And I just had a little production line and got them all done. And the kids were amazing. Nora was actually helping me at one point. She was taking the pins out for me. So, and then I could press them, iron them, fold them into thirds, and Bob's your uncle. So worked out really well. Actually, the reason why the teachers are getting towels is because for Christmas, I gave them each a tea towel from that asymmetrical warp that I had done. So they each got a towel at Christmas, not James's tutor because he wasn't working with her yet, but the other three did. And it's really been nice for me. Every time I see them, they're like, we love your towel. They've all been using them and washing them. And one of James's teachers got a knit shawl from me last year because he's had her now for 2 years. And she actually sought me out one day at the school. She knew that I was outside talking to a couple friends. She came over and said, I really wanted to come and just tell you how much I loved your tea towel at Christmas. And I said, oh, thank you so much. And she's like, I'd love to buy some from you. And she said, I just would love to have another one. And I said, oh, I'll next time I weave off a whole bunch, I'll keep you in mind. Of course, with the intention of giving her one. So anyways, the three of them had just been so kind about it. And Miss James's tutor had actually emailed me after I gave it to her on Thursday. James actually gave it to her. She emailed me and was like, thank you so much. Like, this is such a thoughtful gift. So I thought, when you get that kind of a reception from giving something like this, like I'm happy to do it, but when it's just really kind. So yeah, thank you for your kind words, you guys, about it. Yeah, I like 20 ends per inch for 8-2 cotton, 2/8 cotton, whichever one you say. Because I know the conventional wisdom is 20 ends per inch for 2/8 cotton. And Jane Stafford in her online guild talks about you can go to 18 ends per inch or you can go to 20 ends per inch. The reason why I often set 2/8 cotton at 18 ends per inch is actually not because I have tons of experience and because I know what I'm doing, because that's not the case at all. My friend Jeanette, who's a master weaver, actually said to me to set it at 18 because in her experience, and she's woven a lot, is that people set 2/8 cotton at 20 ends per inch, but then as they weave off the warp, they end up with 16 ends per picks per inch. So you've got your 2/8 cotton set at 20 ends per inch, but then you end up weaving at 16 picks per inch. So in a square, you end up with 32 ends. And so her comment, her thinking is if you set it at 18 ends per inch and you weave at 18 ends per inch, because it's just easier to beat at 18 ends per inch both picks because when the fabric is set at 18 ends per inch, it's easier to beat 18 picks per inch. Whereas when it's 20 ends per inch, it's harder to beat 20 picks per inch. And so her thinking is, well, if you do 18 and 18, you still end up with 32 in your little square. So is it 32 or 36? Sorry, 36. So if you set the fabric at 20 ends per inch and you end up kind of going on to autopilot and doing 16 picks per inch, because it's hard to beat down 20 ends per inch. If you set it at 18 and then you beat 18, then you're still ending up with 36 ends. And it just kind of made sense to me. So I've just always kind of done that because that's sort of what I was taught by her to do. But then twill is a little bit different. So that's where it sort of gets into a bit of a playing with different things. But the 18 worked really well with the twill. It's made beautiful fabric, beautiful. And the linen drapes so nicely and it creates such a beautiful fabric anyways. I think you can't really go wrong. So yeah. All right. Bye, Bridget. Good to see you. So yeah, give them a try, Dana, and report back. Let us know. So if you do 18 for your next towels, let us know how they're different and whether you like them, because that'd be really cool to hear. All right, I'm going to say goodbye. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your weekend and a wonderful rest of your day. It is rainy and cold here, but we've got a cul-de-sac celebration for one of our one of the kids. He's graduating from high school, so we're having a little bit of a celebration for him this afternoon. So until next time, happy spinning, happy knitting, and I hope you guys have a wonderful week. And I will chat with you next weekend. Bye, guys.